welcome to the Love, Listen, Talk, Repeat podcast. I'm Wendy Capewell, your relationship specialist, and this podcast is all about things relating and affecting relationships. I'll be interviewing guests who are experts in their profession, learning more about what they do and how they help others. In some episodes, I'll be sharing some insights and tips of my own. So settle back and enjoy. Today I'm going to be talking to the lovely Catherine Watkin, who works with business owners who want to help clients and work with them, but without affecting their integrity. And what I met Catherine with one of her programs that I did. She's a lovely person. She's warm and gentle. But she's a real good businesswoman at the same point. And I always felt that horrible feeling of being sold to, which I really hate, that kind of real salesy pitch where you're just feeling uncomfortable. But Catherine doesn't do that. She encourages that gentleness and collaboration when we're working with people, and that is just delightful. So without anything further, I'm just going to introduce Catherine and I'll ask you to tell us more about yourself, Catherine.
Okay, yeah. Hello, Wendy. Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. It's lovely to talk to you. I always enjoy your company anyway.
Thank you.
So tell us a bit more about you. And the thing that you wanted to bring really was the fact you don't have to be in a relationship to be happy.
Yes. So, I love the sound of your podcast, and I know that you're not only speaking to people about sort of standard conventional relationships, those are important as well, but that you've been interviewing people on a whole range of topics that are related to relationships. And of course, for me, I felt that there's a really important message that we just don't hear often enough. And I know I certainly didn't, which was that it is perfectly possible to be genuinely happy as a single person. And I feel that our society, the way that we're culturally conditioned, the way that we're brought up to have this assumption that we will only be happy with a partner. And I know, when I was a child, I lived in a very sort of remote part of North Wales in a small village, and the thing that I did was reading. I just used to read like crazy, and I read all the romance novels. I read just so many like novels about romance, about relationships. Everything's about relationships. And I grew up to believe that my happiness was only going to come when I discovered the knight in shining armor. And I got that from books I was reading. And then as I grew up, that's from family around you. Have you found a partner yet? Oh, are you still single? Oh, and there's this expectation that somehow we're somehow not complete if we're single, and we buy into that. And then we start to believe that we're not happy if we're not in a relationship. And what I discovered much later in life than I would have chosen to is that, oh my gosh, nobody told me, but actually it's possible to be really genuinely completely happy and be single. And why isn't there more of a message that this is a possibility? And so I said, oh, let me come and do a podcast for you on being happy single, because I think whether someone's in a relationship or not, or they're looking for a partner, to understand that it's not the only option for happiness, I think is a really important message.
I totally agree with you. I grew up exactly the same way. Yes, romance novels, and it was an expectation that that's what women would do, because I'm older than you, and it was forced upon us, that reinforced even more so when you're getting married, when you're getting engaged, when you're going to have children, where all of that, there were the expectations that I was going to be a wife and mother, and that almost pushed me into that situation, whether I wanted to or not. There was all of that, and the world is full of couples. If you're not in a couple, then fortunately life is changing, because I know there are a lot more people that are happy being single. But there is that, if there's any offers for hotels, then it's for a couple. You have to pay single supplement in a hotel. Booking I tried to book a cinema ticket just to go on my own. I don't mind going to cinema on my own, but you couldn't book it unless you sat next to somebody. You couldn't leave a spare seat. And it was why I don't want to sit next to somebody else. I love going to the cinema, but I don't want to be sitting bunched along with a lot of other people. Even if I've had a cup of coffee at the coffee shop and they said, "Oh, you're on your own today." And so there's something really bad about being on your own. Why?
Yeah, exactly, totally. But I think it's also about how we experience that. A lot of that, I think, is again this sort of conditioning that we pick up, because just as context, I've been single for about 10 years now. So the last relationship that was any length of time ended, I think, around 2008 perhaps, and it was about a 3-year relationship, but we weren't living together, and it was a bit on and off, and it wasn't a terribly healthy relationship. Then about 5 years ago, in 2012, I had a relationship that felt quite serious, actually. But in fact, when I look back, it was only about 3 months, like probably 3 months in the relationship, and then another 3 months of messiness continuing. And then since then, or in between then, there's occasional, it's not like I'm like anti being in a relationship. I go dating occasionally. Maybe occasionally I meet a guy and I think he's nice and I explore. But so that's sort of the context of my singleness. And somewhere along that journey, I had the realization that, oh my gosh, I really am genuinely, completely happy single. There is no sense of lack in my life. And I think, it's things like you said, well, the world is full of couples. Well, I don't perceive it that way, interestingly, which is probably why I'm happy single. I don't go out there and think, oh, the world is full of couples. I just go out and I think the world is full of people. And I think that this is one of the things that we do when people are sorry, this isn't to imply this is you, Wendy. It's just you've triggered a line of thought for me.
Yeah.
That I think that when people are unhappy with their single status, they do go out and all they see is couples. But actually, in reality, if I was to walk up the high street of my local town, I would see couples and singles and children and all different types of relationships going on. And actually, for me, this was a moment where I had the realization. There's a little bit of a story about the realization I had about, oh my gosh, I'm actually happy and I'm single, and oh my gosh, no one ever told me. And I'd been on holiday. I'd left it really late to book a holiday, and I'd ended up going off to I went to Glastonbury for 3 nights, and then I went for 3 nights to a spa resort. And of course, at the spa resort, they were nearly all couples. So at dinner and breakfast, there'd be loads of couples at tables together, and I'd be sitting on my own reading a book. I didn't even really notice. And I came back, and the day after my holiday, I was living in a very traditional part of the country at the time. I guess a little bit of a provincial attitude, or very traditional attitude that people had. And the guy had come to fix my boiler at my flat, and we got chatting, and I'd been on holiday, and he was really shocked that I'd been on holiday on my own. And he said, were you not lonely, or did you not feel alone? And I stopped and I thought, do you know what? Even though I was surrounded by couples at that spa resort, and even though I was wandering around Glastonbury and walking on the hills on my own, there was not one single moment in that entire week where I had the thought, oh, it would be really lovely to have somebody here with me. And that's when I realized, oh, there is no lack for me. The sense of lack is coming from society. It's coming from other people telling me something is lacking. But my personal experience of my life when I'm single isn't of lack, and it isn't of noticing the world is full of couples. And yes, if I stay in and yes, if I want to book a holiday, maybe there's a single supplement. But there's another way of looking at that, which is that, yes, I'm paying a bit extra to have the whole place to myself, and how wonderful that is.
Yeah, and you're right, it is perception. And I think I'm perfectly happy to do things on my own. I don't have an issue, but it is other people's perception. I think that they just view it that way. Well, you went away on your own, and well, yeah, I'm quite happy on my own. Actually, for me, and I bet you experience that too. When I'm on my own, experience a lot more around me because I'm not distracted. There's not that insular part. If people are together on their own, that's it. It's almost as though they are that unit. They miss a lot because they're so focused on each other, which is lovely. But I can just spread my wings, look around, and I get talking to all kinds of people because I'm on my own. People are more likely to come and talk to me. I'm more likely to talk to them probably as well. But I have so many more experiences when that happens. So I think there's a lot of benefit, as you say, for being on our own at times or out of choice rather than, oh, you're not going to meet anybody. Do you want to meet anybody? You're not in a relationship. But there is that other people's feelings and beliefs, isn't there?
Yeah. And I'd encourage people to check in and see, like, if you took away what society tells you to expect and maybe what your family tell you to expect, if you genuinely check in with yourself, is there a sense of lack in your life? Now, for some people, the answer will be yes. It will be, yes, there's a huge hole in my life when I'm single. I just hate sitting in on my own in the evenings. There is a huge sadness for some people because there is this, and I guess it's about priorities and motivations. I felt this feeling, but actually it wasn't about love and partnership. It was about my work. I felt a huge sense of lack, a huge gaping hole in my life because I didn't have meaningful work that I could throw myself into for many, many, many years. And I feel that for me, that was the gap, the hole, the space that I needed to fill. And in filling that, there are no other gaps or sense of lack or sense of something missing. For another woman, it might be children. There's a huge space or gap, and that she wants a child, or somebody might want a partner. So I don't think it's wrong. I don't think, what I'm not saying is I'm not saying it's wrong to have a sense of lack or a gap or a hole or a feeling of something missing in your life if actually you really do want a partner. Because I had that feeling about my work. But I would want to encourage people to question, do you really feel unhappy when you're on your own? Would you actually genuinely be unhappy if you left that partner that's making you unhappy? Because all of society's messages tell us that we need to be in partnerships. I mean, all of society's messages tell us we have to be in partnerships, all of them. And it's just not the truth.
No. And I know from experience that I've been very unhappy in a relationship. And that you can be completely isolated and frightened and just completely alone because you're with somebody you're not happy with and isn't the right person. I think there are a lot of people that do that.
Yeah, I think that there are people who become afraid to be alone and so settle for relationships that really don't serve them. And I was the same. That light bulb moment when I was talking to the boiler man, and it was only after he'd gone and I was reflecting, and I thought, oh my gosh, I've just been away for a week and there's been all these couples around me and I haven't even noticed. I've been happy as Larry. I clearly don't have any. I'm clearly happy on my own. But I think that was sometime around 2013. It was July 2013. And so it was, 4.5 or so years ago. So prior to that, that would have made me, I was 43 at the time. So prior to that, I had, I guess from when I first started reading those romantic novels in my teens all the way to age 43, to be programmed like most of the rest of society into believing that I needed a partner and to be happy. And because I believed that, I got myself into a lot of really not nice relationships that really didn't serve me, because I would believe that I would only be happy if I was in one, and I would work really hard to make it work, even if the signs were clear that it wasn't going to work. I would make excuses for the other person. If they weren't maybe treating me very nicely, I'd make excuses for them. I used to have the rescuer thing going on. So if a guy had a bit of a problem with something, whether it was his temper or his drinking or whatever it might be, I would, my job would be to fix them and to help them. I don't do any of that nonsense anymore. It's like, if you want to be with me, you've got to turn up fully fixed, fully healed, fully stable, fully grounded, or not at all. I think that's the freedom that comes from being genuinely happy to be alone. It doesn't mean that I'm anti-relationship. And the irony is, of course, as I told you before we started recording, is that I had said to you a few months ago, oh, I'd love to do your podcast interview because I really think people need to know more about being genuinely happy single. And of course, I've been genuinely happy single. Well, I've been single for the best part of 10 years, but genuinely happy single for about 5 years. And but I am actually currently seeing somebody. I've been seeing him for about 6 weeks. But there's no sense of compromising or trying to make him fit or make me fit. It's like, I'll be with somebody. Like, it has to feel better to be with someone than to be single, or it's not worth doing. And that's quite a big call, really. But actually, I still believe that it has to be better it has to feel better to be with someone than to be single. And that's not easy if somebody brings all of their stuff and their dramas and their baggage to the relationship.
Totally agree. And I think there is that we all have baggage. We can't avoid having baggage. We all collect it along the way. And it could be that conditioning as a child. It could be broken relationships, bad relationships. It can be ill health. It can be all sorts of things that we have dragged along with us. But I think there's something being very aware of, not bringing that drama into the relationship and putting it on the other person. And there's something very much about owning our stuff and healing ourselves before we're able to enter into a really healthy relationship. And I'm delighted that you are seeing someone at the moment, because I think you're a very special lady. And I hope that makes you, that you are happy in it. That's my wish for you. But I know that you are happy anyway. You are a very positive person, and your work certainly has fulfilled a lot of your needs. And I think it doesn't matter, does it? It doesn't matter what it is. But do you feel that sometimes people go into relationships because there's a void, but they feel that it has to be somebody else has to fill it, rather than looking at what other things might fill it instead that will give them fulfillment?
Yes, I think there's a lot of, we're human beings, or having a human experience. There are a lot of things we struggle with. And I think that it's very easy, because of this cultural expectation that we find happiness in another person. I think it's very easy for us to expect the other person to come along and be the answer to our problems. And actually, when I told that story of, the boiler man saying, what, you went away on your own? And I reflected and I thought, gosh, I was really happy on my own. There was something else that happened not long after that. And it was these two things that really cemented this feeling of, I am really okay on my own, and I don't, or finding the partner isn't the answer. And it was that for a good 10 years plus of my life, I suffered from a long-term chronic exhaustive health condition. And part of that was, it was very much associated, some of the symptoms were very severe anxiety and depression. And I struggled with anxiety and depression for years. And in particular, what I call morning terror or morning fear. So I'd be fine, and by the time I got to the afternoon, the evening, I'd usually go to bed feeling really happy. But every morning I would wake up, and the emotion, I would open my eyes, and immediately I would just be flooded with this, what I can only describe as like a terror or a fear of life. And for so many years, I used to think, if I just had somebody here with me, everything would be okay. And it was around that time when I was still waking up with this fear, and I suddenly realized, oh my gosh, if I had a partner with me here now, and I woke up with him, just because I was waking up with my partner, it wouldn't mean the fear wasn't here, because it's part of me. I would wake up and I would still be full of fear and anxiety, and now he'd have to try and help me and deal with me. And it would actually just be to be magnifying the problem. And I realized this fear, this anxiety is a part of me, and having another person lying next to me isn't going to take it away. And so it's up to me to find a way to heal that, which I did. And I now no longer have that fear and anxiety in the morning at all. And in fact, I don't feel anxiety anymore. That's not a part of my life. And I think that makes me a much nicer, easier partner for somebody to be with as well, because I'm quite a happy soul. And that makes me easier. And I think one of the problems we have in a relationship is that we, like I said, we're having our human experience. It's natural for us to feel life as a struggle. Many of us have journeys with anxiety and depression and all sorts of other things like that. And it's so easy for us to think, if I just meet a partner, he's going to be the answer to all these problems. But these are just guys, right? I'm talking about guys because I'm straight, but these are just men. Like, they haven't got a clue how to heal us of our fear and our anxiety. That's our job. And then we can become a better partner to them.
Yeah. And there's a great analogy that I use sometimes, and if you imagine that you're carrying three even really, really heavy bags, and they're so heavy that they're creating pain in your fingers, and your fingers are going white because they're so really heavy, and your partner's doing the same, and your partner says, take my bags. You can't, because your bags are so heavy and it's weighing you down so much and causing you so much stress and anxiety and worry and whatever else, and metaphorically, you can't take the other person's. You have to deal with your own bags.
Yeah. And then if you deal with your bags and you meet a partner who's dealt with his bags, and this was something that became very important to me as I did a lot of work on myself in terms of healing myself, and actually, became genuinely happy in myself. I came to realize that actually I didn't want a relationship where I had to carry somebody else's bags. And it became important to me that if I was going to be with a partner, they needed to be quite sorted, for want of a better word. They needed to be quite emotionally self-aware, sorted, stable, not bringing their drama, not basically coming to me and going, right, I've got these 5 great big bags here, you take them and help me sort them out. I'd be like, no, I've got no bags. If you want to be with me, you've got to have no bags as well. Now, of course, it doesn't mean that life is going to throw its challenges. You can support each other through the ups and downs of life, but that's very different from bringing your bags on you, right?
Yeah. Exactly. You could be supportive, but it's a difference between caring for somebody and rescuing them. Caring for somebody is doing as much as you want to and feel able to. Rescuing somebody is where you're doing more than you want to, and they are staying in that place of not empowering themselves. Otherwise, we become their carer, and they never learn how to cope with themselves. And I think something very valuable about that, and doesn't make for good relationships, that's for sure.
No, not at all.
Yeah, you've been in relationship and you say you're happy being single, but you're not anti-relationship, obviously, because you're seeing someone at the moment.
Yeah, I'm not anti-relationship. I think for a long time, once I realized just how happy I was, it was like, honestly, Wendy, it was like a revelation. It was like, oh my gosh, why did nobody tell me? Why did nobody tell me that actually being single can just be amazing? Life is amazing. There's nothing missing. It's, life was amazing. And so I did have quite a long period of time where I was completely single, because I just really had no, I'd realized how happy I was on my own, and there's got to be a drive to go out and meet somebody. If you're going to go to all the trouble of, say, online dating, for example, there's a lot of work involved in that. You've got to be motivated to want to do it. So I haven't gone and actively sought out partners. But although there was a period of time where I joined a dating agency, as much as anything because of the adventure of it. I was working a lot and I wasn't getting out enough, and I thought, if I joined a dating agency, they were going to introduce me to one man a month to go on a date with, and I thought, well, that's quite fun, going up to London and meeting somebody new. I might meet somebody interesting. Didn't meet anybody interesting at all. That was like probably one of the biggest waste of money I've ever made in my life, that dating agency. But what happens is that I'm not actively seeking, but every now and then I cross paths with somebody in life, and I think, oh, he seems really lovely. And if he's interested in me, I might go and sort of explore. So I was seeing somebody a little bit in the summer, somebody that I'd met at a festival I went to, and got to know him over a few days and really, really sort of fell for him. But when I got home, it was really evident to me that he wasn't interested in listening to me. And whenever we would speak, if we spoke on the phone or we met up, he just talked about himself endlessly and wasn't interested in me. And if I did share anything about me, he would just cut me off and relate it back to himself. And what I was very conscious of in that situation was I'd already really fallen for him. And the older version of me, who believed that the relationship would make me happy, would have made excuses for him or would have tried to work on that, meanwhile feeling more and more and more unhappy. So I went away with him for a weekend, and honestly, it was the loneliest I have felt in many, many years. That weekend I spent with him, I felt so deeply lonely, and it was because I was sharing things of myself that felt personal, but he wasn't listening. And because I'm so happy single, I was able to go, do you know, I really like this guy, and there's a really fantastic connection, and there's something about him that made me fall for him, but this isn't what I want. I have a need, and my need is to feel listened to, and that's a strong need. And I broke up with him on the basis that he didn't make me feel heard. And that was the reason I gave him. And, you know, so it's very clear cut. It's like, I don't tolerate anything. And so then there's this, a guy that I'm seeing at the moment, and it's been about 6 weeks or so, and it's all really lovely. And there's nothing to tolerate. It's just all really nice and lovely. And that's good. But again, I know that, I probably wouldn't have been, and who knows, you know, 6 weeks isn't long, who knows whether it becomes something lasting or not, but he's a very special soul himself, regardless of whether we work out as a couple. He's a very special soul, and I just wouldn't have attracted a very special soul like him if A, I hadn't done all the work on myself to be genuinely happy single, and if B, I had stuck around men who weren't meeting my needs trying to make it work. I wouldn't have been available and single to meet this lovely guy.
Yeah, and I would take that even further, because I think it's, if we're not happy in ourselves, then we don't attract anybody of the right kind into our lives. I know when I've been very unhappy in my life, or I've been very prickly. I can remember years ago now, I was so prickly I even had spiky hair. And back it was, that was a reflection of the way I was. But I wasn't attracting those really warm, loving, genuine people around me. And I think there's something about that, very much so. And so I agree with what you're saying totally. It's when we're content and happy in ourselves, we'll attract the right people into our lives. I know I'm doing that more and more as I am happy in myself. So, yeah. Yeah.
And of course, there's a flip side. So the flip side to being happy single, because of course, we're not saying relationships are bad. We're just saying, or I'm just saying, you don't have to have one to be happy. What matters is that you're happy, having a positive life experience, whether that means you've got a partner, a dog, whether you're single, whether you've got a house full of 20 adopted children, it doesn't matter. What matters is that your life experience is happy. But the flip side is that, you know, there is a lot to be said for relationships when they work, when they're nice, when they're warm and nurturing and loving and supportive. They add a certain level of richness, an extra layer of richness to our lives. So it's not that they're all bad. And the problem is that when you're genuinely happy single, you're not, this is my experience. When I'm genuinely happy single, I'm not filtering for men. I'm not filtering for partners. And then I might miss out on meeting nice partners. So this guy that I'm seeing at the moment, I met him for the first time in May last year. So that's quite a long time ago. I didn't really notice him. He fell for me pretty much instantly and had this thing for me ever since May, until he finally asked me out at the end of December. And I hadn't really even paid any attention to him. And it was because I was happy single, I wasn't noticing men around me. And that's not necessarily a good thing, because it means that I'm not maybe not as a, so there's almost this halfway house, I think, where you can be happy single and then actually also be actively looking for a partner. Then you're more likely to meet one. But then it, you know, like I said, if you're happy anyway, it doesn't really matter, does it? It's like they're just different. You know, you're happy single or you're happy with somebody, just different. It's a different experience, and there's pros and cons of both, I guess.
What do you define as being happy?
Having okay, so being happy, I guess that's a good question, because this doesn't mean like bouncing off the ceiling all the time in this like amazing, like swinging from the chandeliers happiness. It's like a thread that runs through life of a very, at the core of my life experiences, I'm okay. The world is a good place, a safe place. I feel good about my life experience. It doesn't mean there aren't not good moments. So today, last night, I didn't sleep very well. I think it's because I drank coffee yesterday and I should know better. And I woke up this morning, then I spilled tea on my bed covers. And this morning I'm having a grumpy morning. Now, so of course you might look at me and go, she's a bit grumpy this morning. How can she say she's happy? But actually I recognize that life has these ups and downs. There are challenges. I run a business. It's not always plain sailing. It's not always easy. Things happen that are, but nothing really gets me down for long. It's like a buoyancy, almost a core buoyancy, where overall my life experience is positive, regardless of the ups and downs that come along. And it means that I don't have, so absence of depression and anxiety is a big contribution to happiness for me, because that was a big part of my life as well. So if I just wake up every day and I just feel good, and I wake up and I get on with my day and my day feels good, and maybe it's not amazingly exciting, but the experience of being alive is a positive experience. And I couldn't always say that about my life and about myself.
Yeah, because I think people have different views of what happiness is, and I was curious about yours, and I think the same for me. Yes, life isn't all plain sailing, but there are certain things and elements that will add to my happiness, or I will feel happy, whether I'm with somebody or not. It's something inside us, isn't it? But some people they're not happy unless they're in a relationship or they've got certain things in their life. And I think,
but you see, I would almost want to question that. Now, I can't question people on an individual basis, but if somebody said, I'm not happy unless I'm in a relationship, I would want to question whether they're really happy in a relationship. It's like that saying, isn't it? When I was younger and I was very unhappy and I struggled a lot with depression and anxiety, and I always had ever since a teenager, I used to travel a lot and I was always living abroad. So, you know, by the time I was in my mid-30s, I had lived in the US, in Australia, in India, in Switzerland, in Israel, in Greece. I was always seeking the place in the world where I was going to be happy. And of course, wherever I went, it's that saying, I take myself with me. So wherever I went in the world, I took myself with me. And as it turns out, I'm as happy as Larry in Southeast London, but I would be happy as Larry anywhere you put me in the world. And it's because I'm happy in myself. So I would question anybody, now I don't, clearly, but I would almost want to say, so you say you're only happy in a relationship. So how can you be happy in a relationship if you're not happy out of one? Because if the core of your being isn't happy, how does the relationship heal that? And I wonder whether people, they almost try and fool themselves. They go, oh, I'm happier in a relationship. But actually the relationship doesn't make them happy either. It just makes things different.
Yeah. And again, I think people go into relationships for very different reasons. Some people, it's economics. Sometimes it is convenient. Sometimes because they want children and they don't want the children on their own. I think there are a lot of different reasons why people enter into relationships. And I think what's making it more complicated then, I go back a couple of generations and people got married for very different reasons. My grandparents, she wanted a roof over her head, a good hard-working man who didn't beat her up on a Saturday night. And he wanted somebody who would cook and clean, look after the house and bring up the children. And once, yes, they did live, she lived quite an old age, he didn't. But that's like the rest of the species of the world. We lived before medical advancement, etc., long enough to bring out, the offspring up to reproduce and bring up the next generation to survive on its own. But we're bucking the system now because medical science is, we're all living longer, we're fighting diseases, and therefore I think that's making life more complicated and relationships more complicated.
Yeah, and also you said something else there that's made me realise something else, of course, which is, you're right, people do have lots of different reasons for being in relationship. Now, I'm also not the standard normal in that I didn't ever want to have children. Even when I was 6 years old, I could tell you quite clearly when I was 6 years old, when I grow up, I don't want to have children. So, of course, for me, and I think that when a woman knows that she wants children, and other women do, I know I knew I didn't, but most women, they tend to know that one day they want to have children. I think getting into a relationship is a very different thing then, because there is the motivation to find the partner who's going to be the right life partner and the right father for the children. And I think the relationship, it takes on a different reason. So in a way, I could say that I've been lucky because I've been free to choose to be single, because I haven't had the driver of wanting children. Whereas had I wanted children, I wouldn't have been free to be single in the same way, because choosing to be single and bring up my children on my own might have been a tougher job than I wanted to take on in life.
So every relationship is different, really, isn't it? For different reasons, and our drives are very different. So I think, and no relationship is wrong between those two people as long as they're happy and they're not causing each other distress. I think we touched on the open relationships and polyamory and so on, and the fact that everything's okay as long as they're two consenting adults, effectively, and there's an honesty and truth between people. I feel that's all that really matters, and I think honesty is a real big thing, because if there's the reason that the causes that created are either the rules aren't set down in the first place, the boundaries aren't there, and secondly, you get that someone has an affair, but that wasn't the agreement at the beginning, and it's behind somebody's back. But if you are two people are saying, well, look, I don't want that commitment, I don't want that, we both agree, and we both agree that we'll have an open relationship, well, then that's fine.
Yeah, totally. And every relationship can look different, like you said. And I think if you're single and you don't want children, like me, then a relationship means something very different to what the relationship means if you're looking for a life partner to bring up your children. You're almost might be looking for different things, different qualities in the partner, different expectations of that relationship. And it's down to the two people and what they want and whether they want the same things in life, which I think is really important as well.
Yeah. I think that's really important, and I think that I notice that a lot in relationships. People will say to me, even if they're coming to me on their own, and they'll say, well, do you think is that right? Does that? And I say, well, this is your relationship, this is your life, you've got to decide what you want. I can't tell you. It's your choice. It's what you want in life, and not what anybody else tells you that you want. And I'm certainly not going to tell somebody what's okay and what isn't.
Yeah, and we know what isn't okay because we feel. Does it feel good? Does it feel good? What feels good for one person might not feel good for another person.
Exactly. Is there anything else that you really we've missed? Is there anything else that's on your mind that you kind of think, I really want to say that?
I don't think so. I think I've talked about the main things, and I think the main thing was wanting to come and share this perspective of, because I know that I think what can tend to happen is that I know that friends sometimes will look at me and think, oh, she's just in denial, she's just sort of fooling herself that she's happy single, but she's not really, and she'll know the difference when she meets the. And I think it's so easy for people to think, oh, it can't be true, like she must be fooling herself. But actually it isn't, really, truly, genuinely. I know that I am one of the not only am I one of the happiest single people I know, but I'm probably one of the happier people of all the people I know, which is not to say there aren't other happy people that I know, but I know that I have and it hasn't always been the way, but that I do have a very positive experience of my human existence. And it's interesting because a very close friend of mine, who was also single for a long time, then met and fell in love with a guy and started to encourage me that I should meet somebody, almost like she'd realized what I was missing. But even now I'm with this very lovely guy and very happy with him, I still feel, yeah, but I'm not more happy than I was. It's just different happy. And I really do feel that my experience has been that I'm genuinely happy on my own. Now, there are other things connected to this. I am an introvert. I'm a much more of an introvert than anybody who knows me through my business context would ever realize, because I'm quite public facing with that. So I think this all helps. You could leave me at home for 3 weeks with nothing but a pile of books and I wouldn't even notice I hadn't spoken to anybody. So I think that helps. And I think where people can crave the relationship is if they feel lonely and they want to fill the loneliness. But I don't feel lonely when I'm alone. It would be impossible for me to feel lonely when I'm alone. I could be alone indefinitely. Whereas, like I said, I had a weekend away with a guy who wasn't listening to me, and I felt more lonely than I felt in many, many years. And I think that's part of it. And not everyone is an introvert. Some people are more extroverted. They need people around them to feel happy. There's nothing wrong with that. That's just part of their programming. That's part of their makeup. And probably in those cases, those will be that might be a woman who's happiest when her home is full. She's got a gorgeous husband and she's got 5 children and a dog and a cat and chickens all running around and she's in her element. For me, I remember once saying to my sister's got 3 children and a husband and some cats. I remember saying to my sister, gosh, I couldn't imagine having all these people living in my house. It would overwhelm me. And it's different when they're yours. They feel like an extension of you. But I'm like, I don't know, my solitude, my peacefulness, my quiet time is more important to me, very, very important to me still.
Yeah.
So we're all different, that's where it comes down to. We're all different. But partly the reason why I am so genuinely happy single is probably because I don't have a need for a lot of company.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us today, me and the listeners. It's lovely to be able to share back with people and for them not to feel that they are freaks or anything, that our happiness comes from within, whether we're in a relationship or not. I think it's a really important message. So thank you for sharing that today, Catherine.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Thank you for letting me come and share.
You're very welcome. How's the best way of getting in contact with you?
Well, the best way to find out more about me is probably through my business. So, as you said at the beginning, I work with small business owners who want to get more clients but don't want to compromise their integrity. And the website for that is sellingfromtheheart.com. And, so if anyone's listening who is a small business owner, who is struggling to get enough clients and they want to learn ways of doing that to feel much more authentic and comfortable, there are some resources that they can get for free on the website. So there's a quiz to help them identify their authentic sales style. There's a short free training in how to have authentic sales conversations, all of which I know you're familiar with. Yeah. And that's really my sort of public persona, if you like. In terms of the relationship stuff, this is something that is more the personal side of my life, but that I wanted to share because I think it's such an important message. And I know that it was a revelation for me at 43 to be, oh my gosh, I'm happy. Why did no one tell me this was actually an option for my life?
Absolutely. The contact details will be in the show notes, so you can discover more about you, but obviously not everyone will see the show notes. So thank you so much. I've really enjoyed chatting to you today.
Thank you for having me.
So you can find all the information about this show in the show notes. And you can find lots more on my website, www.yourrelationshipspecialist.co.uk, including the link to my podcasts. And you can also sign up on my newsletter, which has lots more tips and offers. So until next time, bye for now.